The forensic test results finally came back. 45 days later, 0 arrests, no named suspects. Then this week, 3 major fronts shifted simultaneously. Search teams pulled the cadaver dogs. The family regained control of the house. And that biological evidence investigators spent weeks processing? The exact DNA this entire case hinged on returned 0 matches in the federal database. 3 signals in one tight window. Whenever an investigation pivots 3 ways at once, something moves. The real question remains whether they are moving toward an actual answer or away from one. But pay close attention to what nobody discusses today. While detectives awaited those DNA results, Nancy Guthrie quietly handed her neighbors a map. It charts a route through the Catalina Foothills, tracing the darkest, most isolated road stretch there. Then, on March 15th, retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer analyzed it publicly. She stated it might solve the one puzzle investigators cannot answer. How did the suspect vanish? Stay focused here, because that specific map completely alters our understanding of this entire case. Welcome to the investigation room. Let us examine the evidence. Inside the investigation room, we track raw evidence. Forget the press briefings or summaries. We analyze the documented record, what it proves, and exactly what it lacks. We drop new, in-depth documentaries every week. If this case refuses to release its grip on you, hit that like button and drop a comment below when you finish watching. Tell me what Annie's map tells us about this suspect. Did he visit that neighborhood before? Does he live nearby? Your analysis truly matters. Now, we start with confirmed facts. She qualifies as a vulnerable adult under every single legal and medical definition available. She struggles to walk. She relies on a cane. As Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos stated publicly, she cannot walk 50 yards alone. She needs daily medication for a severe cardiac condition, one serious enough to require a pacemaker. That device monitored and regulated her heartbeat, staying fully connected to her Apple devices while she slept. On the evening of January 31st, 2026, Nancy hosted dinner and game night with her family. Her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, married to Nancy's daughter Nancy Guthrie, drove her home and dropped her off around 9:50 p.m. Mountain Time. At 9:48 p.m., her garage door opened. By 9:50 p.m., it closed completely. That remains the absolute last confirmed sighting of Nancy Guthrie by any publicly identified person. What followed next was a chilling digital sequence faithfully recorded by the machines surrounding her home. At 1:47 a.m., on February 1st, Nancy's Nest doorbell camera suffered tampering and disconnected entirely. At 2:12 a.m., a second camera picked up motion, yet produced absolutely no available footage. Someone deliberately disabled that camera as well. Then came 2:28 a.m. Nancy's pacemaker application severed its connection from her Apple devices. The Bluetooth link connecting her heart monitor to the nightstand phone went dead silent. At 2:36 a.m., a neighbor's Ring camera positioned on Camino Royale, situated roughly 2.5 miles away from Nancy's property, captured a vehicle speeding south. Investigators officially confirmed the exact drive time from Nancy's address to that camera location equals approximately 6 minutes. 2:28. Add 6 minutes of driving. 2:36. The timeline holds perfectly. Family members arrived at noon after Nancy missed her virtual church service. They discovered the front door unlocked, her essential medication resting on the kitchen counter completely untouched, her car parked in the garage, her wallet left inside the house, her phone resting on the nightstand, and blood pooling on the front porch. DNA testing later confirmed that blood belonged to her. The FBI released surveillance footage they recovered with Google's direct assistance, since the physical Nest camera vanished from the property. It showed a masked figure standing at the front door. They arrived armed, wearing black nitrile gloves, and carrying a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack. Walmart sells that exact backpack exclusively. The suspect holstered a gun at center waist in a highly unusual position. Their pocket held a strange object featuring an antenna-like protrusion. Sheriff Nanos formally cleared the entire Guthrie family, all siblings and their spouses, as suspects on February 16th. That official clearance remains on record and nobody has retracted it. 45 days later, this investigation forcefully entered a new phase, advancing on 3 separate fronts all at once. We must examine each front separately because they all provide specific data. Pieced together, they reveal exactly what investigators refuse to say out loud. Consider the cadaver dogs. Deploying them to any property signals a grim working assumption from investigators. They suspect human remains might be present or were present previously. Standing those dogs down and removing them from active deployment hardly means the search for Nancy ends here. It simply means investigators concluded the property and its immediate surroundings do not hold what those dogs trained to find. That stands as a hard forensic conclusion, never a guess. Now consider the crime scene release. Forensically, releasing a crime scene marks a deliberate decision. It never happens by accident. It certainly does not happen just because somebody forgot to file a standard paperwork form. The suspect wore a mask, but it slipped. That tiny gap changes everything. When police release a scene, they believe they collected all its secrets. Every surface swab, every biological trace, every digital device, every camera, every single router. Investigators identified, cataloged, and extracted every piece of physical evidence that location could yield. They stood down the search dogs. That tells us something massive without anyone uttering a single word at a press conference. The answers no longer reside inside that house. They pulled the evidence out and sent it off to labs. The scene sits exhausted. But what did they find? They found DNA. But 0 matches in CODIS means one highly specific thing. The person whose DNA turned up inside never caught a felony conviction in the United States requiring collection. Or, and this exact distinction matters enormously right now, the sample degraded or mixed way too much to produce a clean profile for the system to process effectively. Investigators did not find a clean, single-source sample inside NY's home. They discovered a mixed DNA profile from multiple individuals layered directly on top of each other. That mixture represents the most technically challenging puzzle a forensic lab can tackle. How do they fix it? Sheriff Nanos publicly acknowledged these exact challenges. He told NBC News the lab reported specific sample difficulties. He said, "We listen to our lab, and our lab tells us that there are challenges with it. And we understand those challenges, but our lab also knows the technology moves so fast they think some of this stuff will resolve itself in just a matter of weeks or months." He added he remains hopeful the samples will eventually reach a point where investigators can submit them for investigative genetic genealogy. The operative phrase there is eventually. That word carries absolutely 0 urgency, and for an 84-year-old woman with a documented cardiac condition, missing her daily medication for 45 days, urgency remains the only variable. Will time run out? They need a break. Arizona State University forensics professor and former DNA analyst April Stonehouse told NewsNation she remains hopeful investigators will find usable samples. She noted the suspect's face mask failed to cover his nose and mouth entirely during portions of that doorbell footage, which means he likely deposited his saliva somewhere inside that home. Blood, semen, and saliva rank as the 3 most forensically valuable substances for DNA analysis. Stonehouse said investigators will specifically examine items they believe the suspect handled or directly contacted while inside the house. But there is a catch. Science is not the actual problem. Technology for processing mixed DNA samples currently advances faster than most people realize. The true challenge lies in the specific composition of what they collected, evaluating the ratio of suspect DNA to victim DNA, and seeing if the suspect's contribution proves dominant enough to isolate as a standalone profile. Sheriff Nanos explicitly described this dynamic as the primary obstacle. He said the lab keeps working, and technological advances over coming months might resolve current difficulties. So what happens if CODIS fails entirely? Former NYPD Forensics Investigations Division Deputy Chief Emmanuel Katranakis told CBS News that genetic genealogy acts as the absolute final effort to match DNA after CODIS returns 0 results. He stated, "If this perpetrator has a relative acting as a convicted offender in the database, you build a family tree right around it. The process pushes outward from whatever connection exists. Every distant cousin who uploads their raw DNA to a publicly accessible genealogy platform radically increases the probability of finding a connection. This exact reason explains why C.C. Moore is involved. Moore's technique bypasses the need for a direct CODIS match. How? By analyzing hundreds of thousands of genetic markers across the entire genome. That dwarfs the 20 markers used in standard CODIS searches. They upload that comprehensive profile to genealogy databases, explicitly allowing law enforcement access, specifically GED match, family tree DNA, and DNA justice. The system then hunts for distant genetic relatives, sharing as little as 1% of their DNA with the suspect. When they score a match, genealogists build a family tree mapping outward from that specific connection, working forward and backward through generations, using public records, census data, and birth and death certificates, and genealogical archives until the tree isolates one specific candidate. At that point, investigators execute covert DNA collection. A restaurant cup, a cigarette, a tissue from a trash receptacle. That confirmation sample permanently closes the case. But does it work? It works. This exact protocol identified Joseph James DeAngelo as the Golden State Killer after he spent over 3 decades in hiding. The very same protocol confirmed Brian Kohberger in the University of Idaho murders using his father's DNA collected from a Pennsylvania trash receptacle. Kohberger received 4 consecutive life terms without parole on July 23, 2025. Moore has stated publicly and directly, he left the ultimate unerasable fingerprint behind. If I sat in the kidnapper's shoes right now, panic would hit, because investigative genetic genealogy guarantees his identification. Not a mere possibility, and not a strong maybe. Authorities will absolutely identify him. Yet this certainty comes with a massive, unavoidable catch. Corporate privacy policies severely restrict law enforcement from accessing those massive genealogy databases. Ancestry, DNA, and 23andMe hold over 37 million profiles combined. Yet they completely ban law enforcement from their vaults. Investigators remain restricted to GED match, family tree DNA, and DNA justice, collectively holding under 2 million profiles. This reality builds a fundamental wall between theoretical scientific capabilities and actual results achieved under the strict legal and corporate constraints existing today. Any rapid identification depends entirely on whether the suspect's relatives sit inside those 2 million accessible database profiles and whether the suspect possesses deep American roots within a demographic heavily represented across those specific platforms. Moore spoke bluntly regarding the timeline. She predicts this process takes weeks or months, absolutely not years, considering the massive resources dedicated to this case. She noted, "I would suspect the FBI genetic genealogy team gets brought in if it takes too long, possessing significant resources." C.C. Moore joining this fight reveals something crucial. Investigators refuse to abandon the DNA evidence. They plan to bypass the wall CODIS dropped in their path. However, navigating around that barrier consumes critical time. While scientists grind through lab work, a crucial event unfolded inside this neighborhood without anyone noticing. Right as the investigation began, well before the FBI established their official tip infrastructure, before the Puma County Sheriff's Department organized their formal neighborhood canvass, Annie did exactly what any frantic daughter would do. She grabbed her phone. She built a group chat with local neighbors and dropped a specific map. That map highlighted a route cutting through the Catalina Foothills, a secondary back road twisting through the community far from major intersections and entirely avoiding the traffic lights, deliberately dodging those commercial corridors where eye-level surveillance cameras naturally watch every passing vehicle. On March 15th, retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer posted that map on X. Her analysis totally reframed the lingering question of why the suspect's vehicle remains publicly unidentified. Coffindaffer, carrying 25 years of FBI agent experience, wrote, "This route remains incredibly desolate. Few streetlights, few houses sitting close to the pavement, 0 traffic lights. She concluded it makes the perfect path to escape that neighborhood unseen, especially driving with your headlights off. This explains the unidentified car. Let that settle. The vehicle caught on the Ring camera at 2:36 a.m. on February 1st drove straight down Camino Royale. This back road exits the Catalina Foothills neighborhood while intentionally avoiding every single major intersection. Fox News independently verified through neighbors living along that street that the route acts as a secondary neighborhood exit. It perfectly bypasses those main corridors where authorities typically mount automatic license plate readers and traffic cameras. Camino Royale neighbors told Fox News Digital that police completely skipped canvassing their specific block during the first 25 days of the investigation. Those residents found the footage themselves. They personally handed it to the FBI. This suspect never accidentally stumbled down a pitch-black road at 2:30 in the morning. He memorized his exact path long before he ever approached Nancy Guthrie's front door. His preparation involved mapping his exit down the darkest, most camera-sparse stretch of road in that neighborhood. And Annie recognized that exact road, too. That explains why she shared the map. She never asked her neighbors to conduct a vague search. She pointed directly at the exact escape route she believed the suspect utilized. She knew this specific path intimately after spending a lifetime living there. This hidden route slices through a level of absolute darkness that simply does not exist across most American neighborhoods at 2 in the morning. This reality prompts the hard question Jennifer Coffindaffer now asks. Did authorities actually identify and review footage from every single camera along that route? Did the FBI canvass every house sitting on the path Annie highlighted on her map? If they failed, why? NewsNation reported investigators suddenly started demanding neighbor camera footage from January 24th, exactly 1 week prior to the abduction. That date joins January 11th and January 23rd as highly specific timeline markers investigators flagged for potential relevance. 3 dates weeks before February 1st, January 11th, January 23rd, January 24th. The FBI never requests footage from exact dates without very specific, undeniable reasons. Whenever detectives narrow their surveillance requests down to a highly particular date and time window, they do it because evidence strongly links an event on that date to the primary crime. They likely possess cell tower data, placing a specific device right there. Perhaps they already identified a partial vehicle match caught on another neighborhood camera. They might hold a witness account deliberately hidden from the public. Here is what we actually know. An unseen predator spent weeks hunting in plain sight. By January 11th, this suspect actively observed the Catalina Foothills neighborhood. Come January 23rd, behavioral analysts verify he executed a terrifying dry run. A Ring camera, 6.5 miles from Nancy's property, caught the figure walking backward. He wore the exact Ozark Trail backpack he eventually hauled to her front door 9 days later, deliberately exploiting motion-activated cameras, shielding his face during the exact moment of the sensor activation delay. Then came January 24th. Investigators believe an event that day connects directly to February 1st. A resident residing in the Catalina Foothills for almost 30 years spotted a man around that date who absolutely did not fit in. Hat pulled low, hunched posture, moving slowly while scanning properties. He stared specifically at Nancy's house. Not arriving, not leaving, lacking a destination, just watching. Strangers stand out in this neighborhood, and he clearly did not belong. Yet he stood there before. He walked that exact road. He mapped out every camera blind spot. He pinpointed exactly which road went pitch black. Come February 1st, he utilized that specific route. So how do they catch him? Jennifer Coffindaffer offers direct, consistent public analysis throughout this investigation. DNA provides a path, but current conditions make it agonizingly slow. Investigative genetic genealogy works. C.C. Moore proves that reality across over 300 cases. However, it requires a viable profile, accessible database matches, plus crucial time this family simply might not possess. Coffindaffer aggressively highlights another dimension of this case severely lacking adequate attention in most coverage. She publicly noted the FBI billboard campaign, plastering images of Nancy Guthrie across Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, and California, partnering directly alongside Clear Channel Outdoor, heavily spotlights Nancy's face instead of the actual suspect. Her assessment landed brutally blunt. Show him, he remains the key. Investigators desperately need the public to identify this masked figure bearing the tattoo, the ring, and the backpack. That exact physical combination of hidden identifiers is what someone across this city or state might just suddenly recognize. What happens next? Coffindaffer directly warns about another terrifying dimension of this manhunt, currently receiving far too little public attention. She explicitly wrote, "There is a kidnapper, at least one individual, and a potential murderer roaming the streets. Who becomes their next target? Will this individual strike again?" She continued, stating this remains a massive issue. She clarified she is not attempting to raise hysteria, just saying community protection seems completely lost within the investigation noise. Sheriff Nanos rapidly confirmed her exact concern from the opposite side of the investigation. He warned the public directly, while telling NBC Nightly News this suspect could absolutely strike again. Do not think for a minute you are safe just because it happened to the Guthrie family. No. Keep your wits about you regarding a predator demonstrating 3-week surveillance capability, meticulous exit route planning, electronic countermeasure awareness, plus the absolute operational discipline to carry an 84-year-old woman outside her home without getting captured by any perimeter cameras positioned around the property. That person does not suddenly become safe for the community merely because 6 weeks passed. He only grows more confident. Consequently, the United Cajun Navy submitted a 41-page operational plan to Sheriff Nanos, offering 25 specialized cadaver dogs, advanced thermal drones, and a structured search approach conquering the rugged Catalina Foothills terrain. The sheriff never responded to their offer. A judge expects to rule on whether to authorize the organization to assist, despite the sheriff maintaining complete silence. If that ruling comes through favoring expanded civilian search participation across the grid, the physical hunt for Nancy's location expands in a massive way it has not seen since the early investigation days. The DNA inside Nancy's home is a mixed sample, returning no match in CODIS. Technicians process it for separation. The ultimate goal isolates the suspect's specific genetic contribution from the mixture, preparing a usable profile for investigative genetic genealogy. The entire timeline hinges strictly on the quality and composition of that sample. Sheriff Nanos acknowledged this process could easily consume weeks, months, or even longer. C.C. Moore offers a public assessment that investigators will resolve this case within weeks or months, given the massive resources applied to it. Police just released the crime scene back to the Guthrie family. Handlers stood down the cadaver dogs from the property. Both decisive actions clearly signal investigators exhausted the entire forensic value of that physical scene. Whatever the investigation needs right now must originate from evidence already collected, or from crucial elements not yet found. The map Annie Guthrie sent her neighbors reveals a chilling exit route cutting through the darkest stretch of road in the Catalina Foothills. That distinct route runs along Camino Real, a back road purposefully avoiding all major intersections and traffic cameras. A heartbeat flatlined in the dark. Suddenly, a street camera logged a mystery car at 2:36 a.m. on February 1st, exactly 8 minutes after her pacemaker disconnected and a 6-minute drive from NY's house. That vehicle remains unidentified. Coffindaffer calls this failure to identify the suspect vehicle deeply concerning at this investigative stage. Detectives just expanded their dragnet, demanding security footage from January 24th as a brand new date of interest, joining January 11th and January 23rd. The FBI urgently needs a phone, a vehicle, or a suspect popping up around the Catalina Foothills area across multiple days. Are they watching? Finding that single data connection instantly rockets this entire case into a completely different phase. The FBI partnered with Clear Channel Outdoor, blasting missing person billboards across Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, and California. The campaign continues. Coffindaffer publicly argued these billboards need the suspect's face, not just NY's photo. Her assessment? Show the killer he's the target. The combined reward now exceeds $1.2 million. $1 million from the Guthries, $100,000 from the FBI, plus Crime Stoppers cash. That amount isn't abstract. It represents life-changing money. They designed this bounty to build pressure that silence simply cannot survive. Former FBI profiler Jim Clemente dropped a bombshell on Brian Enton's podcast. He believes detectives already interviewed this suspect early on. Investigators simply lacked the hard evidence to make an arrest. He insists elite detective work means circling back for the truth. Those real answers hide somewhere inside this data. The DNA, the camera footage, the cell tower records tracking 3 weeks of stalking, the exact route on Annie's map, the vehicle at 2:36 a.m., the mysterious right wrist tattoo, the hidden ring under a glove. Every single clue represents a pulled thread. First, the exit route. Annie's map isolates a specific path cutting through the Catalina Foothills. Did investigators identify, secure, and scrutinize every single camera touching that perimeter? Camino Real neighbors told Fox News Digital that police completely ignored their doorbells for the first 25 days. How many surrounding properties hold crucial unseen footage that detectives never even bothered to request? Thread 2 exposes those 3 terrifying reconnaissance dates. Detectives officially flagged January 11th, January 23rd, and January 24th as highly specific interest dates. The FBI never demands date-specific video drops without possessing a rock-solid reason. What exact data point, cell tower ping, partial vehicle match, or witness sighting drives these requests? Did any device, vehicle, or person surface on camera across multiple dates? Here is the third thread, the DNA timeline. Sheriff Nanos claimed DNA processing could require weeks, months, or longer. C.C. Moore predicts a strict weeks or months window. Those estimates radically clash. What exactly is the bottleneck here? Is the sample quality degraded? Is it the suspect-to-victim DNA ratio? Or is the Florida laboratory simply overwhelmed? Would transferring this critical sample to the FBI facility in Quantico actually accelerate that timeline right now? Thread 4. The vehicle. That Camino Real camera caught a car at 2:36 a.m., heading south, taking a back road, exiting the foothills, dodging major intersections. Annie's hand-drawn map carves directly through this exact terrain. Coffindaffer calls their absolute failure to ID this car deeply concerning. Did the FBI enhance the video enough to isolate a make, model, or partial plate? If so, why keep that intel hidden from the public? Thread 5 involves the judge. The United Cajun Navy submitted a 41-page operational plan to Sheriff Nanos. He met them with total silence. Now, a judge must rule on authorizing civilian search crews to assist. If the court legalizes an expanded search grid, where exactly do boots on the ground focus? Does that grid cover the brutal desert terrain lining Annie's mapped route? Take your theories to the comments. Bring your hard research. This community produces relentless analytical casework, and our job is far from finished. Her daily medication sits untouched on the kitchen counter right where cops found it. Her car never left the garage. Her cell phone remained resting on the nightstand. 3 major shifts hit this week. The DNA hit a wall, cadaver dogs stood down, and police released the scene. But this investigation isn't over. These moves signal a new phase. We entered the laboratory phase. A patient, painstakingly slow, technically complex chapter relying entirely on processing science. But Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She relies on a pacemaker. A ticking clock beats inside her chest. Daily pills keep her alive. 45 days. She has vanished without those critical prescriptions, her heart specialist, and the essential electronic tracking her implanted medical device absolutely requires to function. Considering her age and clinical past, this is no mere theory. We are actively watching a biological clock run down. Annie supplied that specific map because those streets raised her. She recognized exactly which route faded black. She demanded detectives, locals, or anyone paying attention to scrutinize that path. She remains absolutely convinced someone transported her mother through that darkness at 2:30 that morning. The terrifying truth? Her geographic analysis proved entirely accurate. A driver navigated that precise path on February 1st, running entirely dark, vanishing into the Sonoran Desert. Somebody close to our suspect definitely recognizes his true identity. An associate spotted that specific ink on his right wrist. Somebody listened to his alibi and realized it failed. Someone carries that secret while eyeing $1.2 million in reward cash. Technicians are currently isolating the genetic material. Genealogists are actively constructing his lineage. Detectives successfully charted his getaway path. This intense investigation remains wide open. Nancy Guthrie's relatives never quit, and neither do we. If you possess vital clues regarding Nancy Guthrie's sudden vanishing, reach the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or visit tips.fbi.gov. Contact the Puma County Sheriff's Department at 520-35-14900. You can submit every single tip completely anonymously. The Guthrie family offers $1 million. The FBI pledges $100,000. Total available rewards completely exceed $1.2 million. Follow the Investigation Room channel today. Strike that notification bell. When that judge decides on the Sinjin Navy, the minute those genetic results finally return, and this mystery shatters, you must be right here. Leave your thoughts down below immediately. What exactly does Annie's geographic chart reveal regarding our elusive perpetrator? Does he recognize those specific streets from residing locally? Perhaps he previously visited the area running unrelated errands? Or did an accomplice provide tactical instructions detailing the precise escape avenues to utilize? Those concrete answers definitely exist. They demand immediate discovery. Nancy Guthrie demands every asset, every thorough evaluation, and every single watchful gaze dedicated to this active investigation. Let us locate her. Jennifer Coffindaffer, a 25-year veteran of the FBI, stated it incredibly bluntly. A single witness stepping into the light remains our strongest possible resolution tactic. An individual inside his inner circle, somebody harboring a dark secret since February 1st, a spouse, a relative, a buddy, anybody who caught those severe psychological shifts during the weeks preceding this kidnapping, those bizarre purchases, those erratic schedules, his weird inquiries regarding a residential block. He lacked any logical reason to explore, leaving an observer paralyzed by that terrifying awareness, hesitant to speak. Retired FBI behavioral analyst Jim Clemente announced publicly on Brian Enton's True Crime podcast that detectives highly likely interrogated our prime suspect during this investigation's very first chaotic initial hours. They grilled him. Detectives simply lacked sufficient concrete proof at that moment to press charges. Clemente emphasized that elite police work means actively returning, hammering those identical inquiries using the fresh forensic data they recently stockpiled, extracting the crucial responses missing previously. Clemente additionally evaluated that our phantom perpetrator is likely navigating his 30s or 40s, and that he ultimately displayed visible psychological shifts before February 1st. People in his immediate orbit spotted these stark behavioral variations: retail transactions breaking his typical habits, a sudden disappearance, or a shifted daily agenda that felt weird, perhaps acquiring some completely unfamiliar hardware, a random inquiry concerning the Catalina Foothills sector slipping into casual dialogue that feels incredibly chilling looking back. His associates can pinpoint those exact psychological deviations if they search their recent memories carefully, and honestly, one of them is streaming this video today. That official hotline remains 1-800-CALL-FBI. Submitting your massive secret stays entirely and strictly untraceable. That bounty tops $1 million. If what you witnessed feels even slightly connected, marginally sketchy, or highly doubtful, you must dial that number today. Human remains detection dogs, sweeping the estate and vast desert expanses heavily during those initial weeks, recently received stand-down orders. Officials do not take that massive choice lightly. Launching and maintaining specialized canine grid searches demands heavy operational funding. Halting that effort simply signals that detectives decided heavily analyzing their fresh forensic snapshot, that repeatedly pushing those elite canine units into those identical coordinates no longer represents their absolute smartest tactical investment. Do not get confused. Nancy remains completely missing. It signifies the immediate geographic grid surrounding her residence is fully cleared, satisfying the commanders actively directing these crucial operational resource allocations. The debate Coffindaffer and fellow experts ignited asks whether authorities should push that grid wider, and if the specialized capabilities of civilian powerhouses, like the United Sinjan Navy and Equarch, groups holding proven mastery navigating hostile wasteland environments, might uncover answers that official police completely missed. The United Sinjan Navy operates as a charitable force, maintaining a resume completely surpassing 5 to 1,000 successful brutal backcountry extractions. 41 pages hide it. They submitted this operational plan. Sheriff Nanos has not publicly responded. A judge will soon rule on authorizing civilian search participation. Favorable rulings mean this search instantly expands. If not, investigators keep pushing forward under the current framework. Either way, that vast desert beyond the Catalina Foothills neighborhood stays largely unsearched. Former Pima County Deputy Eric Maldonado, who spent nearly 30 years actively investigating crimes in this exact area, notes the Sonoran Desert permanently swallows evidence without the specific local knowledge required to know exactly where to look. Did the suspect know? He did. Someone took Nancy Guthrie down a dark road at 2:30 a.m. That route goes somewhere, and Annie documented it entirely on her map. Investigators seized Annie Guthrie and Tommaso Chion's blue Honda CR-V early on. By mid-March, authorities still had not fully returned that vehicle to the family. Reporting from Parade described investigators as actively processing every inch of that vehicle, having a mechanic shop reassemble it following an incredibly exhaustive forensic examination. Coffindaffer offered the most forensically coherent explanation for why this car still matters. She raised 4 specific possibilities. Did someone track Nancy from Annie and Tommaso's house on the night of January 31st? Did a tracking device placed on that vehicle alert someone to the exact moment Nancy arrived home? Did someone physically interface with this car, leaving behind DNA or fingerprints? Or does the vehicle contain trace biological material, hair, skin cells, or fibers from someone who never belonged near it? This car represents the last enclosed space Nancy occupied before entering her home at 9:50 p.m. Experts now compare whatever biological material she left inside that car against evidence found inside her house and on her front porch. If a third party's DNA appears there, investigators establish a direct physical connection between the suspect and the last ride Nancy ever took. The Pima County Sheriff's Department explicitly stated the vehicle remains part of their active investigation. They provided zero timeline for its return. That absolute silence is a data point. What does it mean? It means 3 active investigative threads are currently running simultaneously. The laboratory thread processes mixed DNA for separation. C.C. Moore and Parabon Nanolabs stand positioned to build a family tree, the exact moment that sample allows it. The timeline remains uncertain. The outcome, according to Moore, is not. Then comes the digital thread, cell tower data, router probe requests, ring camera footage from 3 specific reconnaissance dates, and that vehicle spotted on Camino Real at 2:36 a.m. A dedicated 5-person task force analyzes all of this full-time, out of the FBI's Tucson office. The thread connecting a device or vehicle across multiple reconnaissance dates ends at one specific person. Finally, the human thread. The $1.2 million reward, the billboard campaign, the community tips, and the person in this suspect's life who noticed something back in January 2026 and has lived with it since. That individual represents the absolute shortest path to an arrest. Will they speak up? They must. Annie sent that map. She grew up on those roads, knowing exactly which one went dark. She knew the exact exit route a person would use to disappear from her neighborhood without ever being seen. Someone used that road. Someone out there knows exactly who he is. The reward waits. The tip line remains open. Anonymity is guaranteed. Nancy Guthrie deserves every single thread pulled until one of them finally leads home. Have information about her disappearance? Contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or visit tips.fbi.gov. Or reach the Pima County Sheriff's Department at 520-351-4900. All tips remain completely anonymous. This case is far from over. This family refuses to stop fighting, and neither will we.